Hey June, what is your favorite study technique? Question that I get asked a whole lot, and it's one that I usually hate to answer simply because I love the learning system, I believe in it, and that's the accumulation of various evidence-based techniques working in harmony, working synchronously to provide us learning outcomes that we want. But if I was forced to answer that question, I would point to a technique that, one, could be standalone and provides us the two main benefits that we're looking for as students, which is depth of comprehension and number two, retention. But the second point to this is it's intuitive for most students. It's something that people can immediately adopt. And I truly believe in the power of it, not only in the context of the classroom, but also outside the classroom. If you're a working professional or you're a business owner, you will have tremendous success in learning new information with this technique. It's one that I've applied literally daily for quite a long time now, and it's extremely beneficial. My name is Jun Yu. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. In this video, we'll speak on what this technique is, how to apply it, along with 4 extremely important benefits. And that's why I encourage you to watch the entire video, because we all know when you can have the context of why we're applying techniques, it allows us to have massive benefits in comparison to if you had just gone through the motions because I just told you to, right? So let's understand the context together. I think you will thoroughly enjoy this video. Please give this video a thumbs up. Ask me any questions in the comments. I'd be happy to respond. And of course, subscribe. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The final unveil for what it is, drum roll, the Feynman technique. In its simplest form, the Feynman technique is you teaching the material to somebody at a much lower level than you, and I like to perceive it as somebody in the 5th grade. And we all know that teaching information isn't just you listening to something and then regurgitating it back and spitting it out and expecting somebody to learn from it. We probably all had teachers that do this or professors that do this, and we know how ineffective it is. Teachers that go through a curriculum, they'll read it, they'll have somebody else's presentation slides that they share, they'll read off the slides, and they'll expect you to learn it. That's a no-no, right? Because teaching is much deeper than that. And we'll speak on the 4 specific benefits because that really requires some deeper conversation, and I believe that it'll be extremely helpful in understanding how to do this technique effectively. But before we do that, let's touch on how to actually apply it, how to use it. Also, that is extremely simple as well. I would encourage you to do this with a friend, and all you are doing is explaining the material to them, and they can provide you that live feedback on if they had understood the information or not, and you want to encourage them to ask you questions that will require you to critically think about the information, and then have you also change your explanations, revamp it, and then explain it again. And this type of iteration process is extremely beneficial. So if you don't have a friend to do this with, and actually I study almost exclusively alone, so in a lot of situations, this was me. Honestly, you can just say it aloud, you can pretend like you're explaining it to somebody, you can talk to your pillow even, but I would encourage you as you get into more refined explanations to record yourself, right? Because that feedback is extremely helpful. So if you don't have somebody to do this as in a friend or a peer, you can do it for yourself. You can listen back on your explanations and then critique yourself. Ask yourself, is it actually clear, right? Could you do better in parts of your explanation? But this is really effective because it doubles as an incredible source of a voice memo, right? What I mean by this is there are a lot of times when we're studying for exams or when I'm preparing for a presentation or I'm leading a team for a project where I'm not actively sitting at my desk doing the work, or I'm not actively sitting at my desk studying, but I still want to make the most out of my time. So a great example of this is when I'm brushing my teeth. I know that my hands are full, but I would love to be able to listen to my own explanation and to critique myself in real time, or just have an ability to consolidate the information by listening to it again, right? Or as another refresher. So it's a great resource for you to utilize. Now let's move into the 4 benefits that I believe if you have the context of, you can really get the most out of this technique. Number 1, it requires active recall. And I've been speaking on active recall for the last 4.5 years while curating content, because retrieval practice is one of the most well-studied techniques out there in terms of facilitating the learning process. So a great way to simply think about active recall is you pulling information out of your brain freely. What I mean by freely is not having cues in front of you. So I've spoken about cues in the context of flashcards in previous videos. So when you are explaining the material to your friend or to yourself in a recording, do not have your textbooks with you, do not have presentation slides open, do not have flashcards open, do not have your notes open. I need you to do this freely from your memory. And this is very different from the passive techniques that only focus on the encoding aspect of the learning process. So if we're thinking about highlighting or rereading or rewriting, I want you to apply active recall, and the Feynman technique is one of the best ways to do this because also it's extremely intuitive. We think about the type of thought required to engage in to have learning occur. The Feynman technique is going to encourage that, and we'll speak about this in benefit number 2. It requires expertise. So I already mentioned that teaching material is way more than regurgitating it or spitting it out to somebody after having listened to it. Probably the next step to that people will go to is, oh, then I just have to simplify the information. No, simplifying the information is not only what you need to do. And a great example of this is when people utilize thesaurus or they utilize an AI program to help them better write a sentence. And what happens when you put it through a program of that nature, or you utilize thesaurus to simplify each of the words? Well, it's simplified, but it might not make sense anymore. It's not accurate anymore, right? So when you simplify information, you also have to take additional steps like reorganizing the information, providing context to the audience, whether it's your friend or it's your own self, and trying to imagine that you're a 5th grader, right? Or someone at a different knowledge level than you. It requires you to supplement your explanations with analogies and examples. It requires you to consider new applications even. So when I talk about how it's not necessarily following a step-by-step process when it comes down to effective techniques, but more about the type of thought that you need to engage in, critical thought, the Feynman technique is a very, very intuitive way for most students to go about this, right? It is, because if I tell you to teach information you've been taught your whole life, whether it's by teachers or coaches, and you know what effective teaching looks like. You know how to go about simplifying information, reorganizing and providing examples and analogies, and how that actually allows you for yourself as a student to learn information better. It also will help you facilitate the right type of thought so that you can be ensuring that you're actually learning the information too. The Feynman technique is great in encouraging you to do that. And that's why when I say it requires expertise, I don't say it requires you to simplify, it requires you to do all of those various elements that I've spoken about. And when I can introduce to a student the Feynman technique, when I teach them the learning method or even how to approach practice sets, it changes the game because now they have an enhanced awareness of the type of critical thought necessary to engage in. Number 3, accurately identifies gaps of knowledge. So many times we go about our revision, and again, not only in the context of your studies, but also in the context of learning new skills and then trying to apply it in the real world as a business owner or as somebody, as a working professional. We have this false sense of understanding, right? Because we might be utilizing passive techniques and it just makes us comfortable with the surface level understanding of the information. When in reality, to do really well on exams at the highest levels, to do really well as a project lead, to do really well in presentations, to do really well in anything at a high level, it requires you to have true depth of comprehension. And that's why when you go ahead and you explain the content, when you explain the material to somebody in the 5th grade, you will naturally hesitate on the areas that you're weak in, but that's okay, right? That's your ability to then scope the next iteration on, okay, how do I now provide another example analogy for this? Okay, how do I reorganize this information? Okay, how can I better simplify this information? Okay, how can I provide a new context to this information? And it requires you to then learn the information in that way, helping you then facilitate the right type of explanation to a 5th grader, and that really helps in learning that. When you can accurately identify gaps of knowledge, it sets you up well for exams, because the last thing you want to do is find out a weakness when it actually matters, when the exam's in front of you or you're actually in front of a lot of people and you are presenting on something. So one of the best ways to accurately identify gaps of knowledge is with active recall applications, and specifically the Feynman technique. Number 4, it improves your communication skills. I can't tell you how important this one really is, and it's almost a secondary benefit of it. I've done 2 internships, both 6-month-long durations, well-regarded pharma companies, and I've also done a 9-month project with Novartis, another well-regarded pharma company. And I say that because in those contexts, I've truly learned you can be the most gifted, technical individual, but it really doesn't matter if you can't communicate your work, because in any type of presentation, you will always have individuals within an audience that is naive. And I don't say naive in a derogatory term. Naive is utilized for individuals that have a different line of work, right? They don't have the same type of context as you. They don't have the same type of research background as you. So you have to be able to present that information in a way that it's simplified, reorganized, has context, is applied in new scenarios, with new applications, with examples and analogies that make it relevant for the individual. So when you are communicating your work, that is the type of thought that you need to be engaged in, and that translates to a person that can eloquently speak on their work. And so when I was presenting at those pharma companies, and when I just recently presented to Novartis, in that, sure, there was 1 or 2 individuals that really understood the ins and outs of the medical device that we had created, but there were stakeholders, there were individuals in different teams, there were individuals that were level 1 engineers, level 4 engineers. There are all different types of backgrounds, and we had to have the responsibility of narrating that information in a manner that actually made sense to our audience members. And so the Feynman technique encourages that, right? So it's your ability to have the secondary benefit when you go about learning information to then be able to teach it that's going to help you in the real world. So I really encourage you now to have this high sense of awareness of these 4 benefits, and this will allow you to make the most out of your time as you apply the Feynman technique. So in conclusion, we spoke about what the Feynman technique is, how to apply it, the fact that it requires active recall and expertise, and also identifies gaps of knowledge and improves your communication skills. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave any questions in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to respond. Give this video a thumbs up, and of course, subscribe. Until next time, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you all at the top.